This is James Lippincott. I'm the Director of Alumni and External Relations here at Antioch College, and it's my privilege to serve in that role and to be moderating the call tonight. Joining us also on campus, I want to give a shout out to the Volunteer Work Project. They've been here all week, and if you don't know about the Volunteer Work Project, you really should, because this is an amazing group of people, mostly alumni, but also parents and friends, people who volunteer of their time 4 times a year. They come to campus and they do work in offices, they do work around campus, they refurbish buildings, they fix vehicles. It's just, it's amazing. And so we just wanted to share a lot of appreciation for that group of people who are here on campus listening right now to the call. And if anybody out there is interested in joining, they would welcome you with open arms. So maybe consider coming out for the work project before reunion in July. We'd love to see you there. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and we won't talk too much about this, but it is March, which means it's our $1 Million March match. And that's when gifts to the college are matched 1 for 1. And this year, our matching donors are Barbara Winslow, class of 68, and Bill Harris, class of 60, and we're really grateful for their generosity. So this is the moment for you to double the impact of your giving, and it's really important for the college's future that we have your support, and we appreciate all that you do for us. So there's a mailer that you may have received in your mailbox. You can return that envelope that's inside, or you can go to the antiochcollege.edu and click the donate button. And then on the call tonight, if you're interested in making a donation right now on the call tonight, you can press *0 at any time, and somebody can assist you. So right before we start our panel, I'll let you know that you can ask questions of the panel, too. So you can dial *3, and you'll be connected to somebody who can put your question through to the panel here. So we're going to go around the table and let you know who is here talking with you tonight. So.
Good evening. This is Gariot Louima. I'm the Dean of Admission and External Relations. I've been back at Antioch since the fall of 2017.
Hi, my name is Ben Zitsman. I'm a 4th-year student here at Antioch.
Hi, my name is Hannah Spirrison, and I'm the Director of Innovation and Institutional Effectiveness, and I have been here since about fall 2014.
Hi, this is Tom Manley, the President of Antioch. I've been here since March 1st, 2016, and I would say, James, there's always thunder and lightning at Antioch College.
Indeed, there is. So Tom, we're going to talk a bit about the strategic plan tonight, but I know that we had something else that we wanted to let the folks know about as well.
The 2 subjects that we want to address tonight have to do with the plan for Antioch at 175, which is our strategic plan. And then we want to offer an update on current activities and issues at the college, which folks may have been hearing about through social media, or if you're a newspaper reader in the Yellow Springs News today.
Great. So thanks, Tom. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. Once again, if any time during the call you would like to ask a question, please dial *3, and you'll be connected with somebody who can take your question and put you on the air with us. So, Tom, give us an update on the plan for Antioch at 75. What is it that we're looking at doing here at Antioch?
So we have been involved since accreditation 3 years ago in a process called DesignBuild, which means that our plan is something that emerges, evolves as we go along. And that plan seeks to reach back to the enduring Antioch, the Antioch that everyone would recognize. And in fact, we're going to be putting, I think, some graphics up on the website, if they're not there now, later, and we'll point you to them. And it goes back to 1850, of course, when the college was founded. And then takes us to 2025, which is Antioch's 175th birthday. And that is the horizon point for this plan. Our work began, as I said, in 2016, shortly after we received accreditation, and is a transition to the college, the new kind of college that we believe Antioch must be and can be, and that we will achieve along the way from this point now, 6 years away from our 175th anniversary. So the values that I think every Antiochian would recognize relate to the three C's, the idea of classroom grounded in liberal arts education, the idea of co-op, which is engaging the world by being in the world through work, and finally the idea of community, which really speaks to a larger value around building a world that we want to be in, and the idea of Horace Mann's notion of winning victories for humanity. The college in this process, the order that I'm going to present these findings or developments aren't necessarily the sequence that we came at them. Planning isn't a linear line. It is something that mixes and creates, and it's messy, and then gains clarity, and then you move on and take it in stages. So our stages were 5. The first, and these are all in some sense overlapping, was about this values search, and the second that we now line up was about finding what Antioch's landmarks were, and there are 3: own your education, learn experientially, and act for justice. We then have built and described a program through curricular redesign and calendar change and the remarkable work of our faculty in a very short space of time to move from a more basic liberal arts set of offerings around disciplines to a complete design your own major, an opportunity for students to have even more agency in their education through choosing their continuing to choose their co-ops, and this idea of community governance and governance reform, and proposing, creating, and co-teaching parts of the curriculum. That's all not in process in the sense that we set that intention and those things are actually happening. Finally, we wanted to really allow the extension of this strong experiential value, and the areas of practice that you may have heard of are 5: environmental sustainability, deliberative democracy, diversity and social justice, well-being, creativity and story. We're also thinking of story and creative practice as the proper title for that, and work world and resilient community. Those 5 areas actually represent a set of frames for the critical problems that we believe the world must engage, and that we have to engage here on our campus and in the wider communities that we operate. And finally, I know I said finally before, Antioch as a college, as a new kind of college, must really express a set of qualities that relate to agency for students, laboratory learning, a college of these 5 practices, a college of participation, a college that commits and is an anchor for resilience, a college that models collaboration, and finally, a college of activism. So that's the 5 steps or phases in the planning for Antioch at 175 that we've been doing, and we now have a set of initiatives that speak to that and a set of programmatic categories that relate to it as well.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So if you want to go on the website and see that diagram that Tom was talking about, you can go to antiochcollege.edu/175. And that's posted on the website for you to look at, along with a video that is now a couple years old, but it does give you an idea, if you have not seen it, about the process that we've gone through to get to this point. So great. There's a lot going on here, and I hope that you've seen in the Antiochian that we've covered a lot of this process along the way. So maybe take a look at the Antiochian that's just landed in your mailbox, but also revisit the one from last spring as well. And you'll see some information about that. So I'm going to ask you, Hannah Spirrison, a question. So this process really hasn't been top down. It's involved the whole community. So can you tell us how people have gotten involved in the process?
Yes. So as Tom mentioned, this is not a traditional strategic plan, so our process has not been necessarily a traditional one. It's been one where really the community has been involved, and we've tapped the community for ideas throughout the process. We've had workshops. We've had an idea bank in different ways that we could really get a sense from the really amazing faculty, staff, alumni, and students that we have here to help us build out the process. Also within the structure, we have the steering committee, so that's one way that we've been leading the process, and this is a group of faculty, staff, and students who have been actively involved in designing and building the plan, and they've actually worked with working groups, and these are groups that are led by our conveners of faculty and staff members around our areas of practice. And these are the groups that are actually out there building out initiatives that are going to form the real sort of next steps and the actions that we're taking to really move towards this plan for Antioch at 175.
That's great. Thank you so much, Hannah. So for everybody on the line, remember you can dial *3 at any time and ask your questions so that we can answer your questions in just a few moments. Once again, that's dial *3. And if you're interested in making a gift to the $1 Million March Match, you may dial *0. Thanks so much for that. So I'm going to go to Gariot, and I want to know how these landmarks that we have talked about that Tom was introducing, Own Your Education, Learn Experientially, and Act for Justice, how have those helped you to bring in a class?
Those landmarks really help us to frame the Antioch education for a new generation of students. We certainly talk about classroom co-op in community, but we are talking to students who understand specifically that this political moment is fraught. They expect the college that they attend to give them ownership of what they learn, what they study, what their community looks like. They expect to learn through action, through practice, and they expect the college to give them a foundation in which they could begin to exercise and act for justice. Every single conversation is different because there is no typical Antiochian, but the majority of our conversations, regardless of whether or not we're talking to a student who's at a comprehensive public high school, a student at a Waldorf school, a student who might have been homeschooled or transferring from a community college, they ask us those questions about whether or not Antioch is indeed going to provide them that platform to exercise the fullest agency in designing their education and owning it, and whether or not Antioch faculty and staff will stand with them as they begin to build careers in which they could win their victories through humanity.
Great, thank you so much. Once again, you may dial *0. We see some questions beginning to pop up, so *0 to add your question to the list, and we'll put you live on the air if you would like. So I'm going to ask Ben, who's our current student here tonight, so how have these landmarks and the qualities that we're using to describe Antioch now, and how has that, how has your experience, having been here for 4 years, how has that really come to life, or, is this something that you think is new?
It isn't new. It's, excuse me, another way to articulate what Antioch has always been about, and hasn't just always been about for the past several years, but has always been about since its foundation. And I think the best thing I can do is speak about my experience with these 3 landmarks. In a couple of months, I'm set to graduate, and I'm working on my senior thesis right now. And the subject of my senior thesis is the intersection of bodybuilding, lifting weights, and religion. And when I think about how that came to be, I see quite clearly how each landmark played a role. First of all, owning my education. One of my thesis advisors is Robert Fogarty. He's the editor of the Antioch Review, and John Dewey, Professor of the Humanities Emeritus. And I had no idea who he was when I came here, but I knew about the Antioch Review, and I knew that I cared about fiction, and I knew I wanted to work there. So I started asking around, and pretty soon I was up in his office on the 2nd floor of the Olive Kettering Library, talking about how I felt about Thomas Pynchon. And I was an intern at the Review, and then I was taking independent studies with him when I learned in the course of the independent studies he's not a fiction person, he's not a writer, he's a historian. He's the best scholar of utopian communities in America from 1880 through 1920, anywhere. And this made me interested in American religion, which made me interested in muscular Christianity, a kind of Christianity from the 19th century where people lifted. And I wouldn't have found that out if I didn't have the opportunity here to own my education, to have some agency, to find what interested me and find people who could do that. And Antioch helped me every step of the way. Learning experientially is the next landmark. 2 weekends ago, I was at the Arnold Classic. It is the biggest bodybuilding convention in the world. It's held annually in Columbus, Ohio. I had press passes. I was researching for my senior thesis, and I was talking to bodybuilders. And I noticed that bodybuilders sweat more than we do. I thought initially that it was just me, but it isn't. They sweat more than we do. I shook one of their hands before an interview ended, and he said, sorry, man, about the sweat. It's just one of those things with lifting. And I didn't know. And I thought, where but Antioch? How else could I have learned this? I never knew I wanted to know this. But I didn't. There I was with my press credentials, the lanyard around my neck, talking to bodybuilders, internationally ranked bodybuilders, and I was in the middle of it, researching for my thesis. And then the last one is Act for Justice. And what I'm doing is basically the sociology of religion. And in researching my senior thesis, I've read a lot of writing about the sociology of religion. And it is esoteric and accessible and largely abstruse. And I think this is a shame because the sociology of religion is a subject that actually concerns everybody. Sociology is the study of societies and how people act in them. Nobody's exempt. And nobody's exempt from the problems, the impulses, the things that religion addresses. And yet it's this area of academia that is as ivory tower as it gets. And I want, in writing my thesis, to make it accessible to everybody because it interests everybody, whether or not they know it, I think. And that's how I'm doing it in my own small way. But another way that Antioch allows students to do that is it allows them to start here on campus and shape the school as they feel it should be, to make it the sort of place they feel it can be. And that's something that for the past couple of weeks, a lot of my peers have been doing. And I guess Tom could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. Right now I want to actually go to David Luce, class of 1967. So David, you're calling from Minneapolis?
I am.
Great. So you're on the line. So go ahead and ask your question.
I'm wondering if you have any current or recent students whose academic focus would be climate change and society.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that question.
And I had a follow-up.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And what is meant by the term environmental sustainability? Or I think the person might have said environmental stability, which puzzled me.
Sure. Thanks so much for the question.
Let me take the second question and then pass it to Ben to talk about how that is happening here. So the area of practice is environmental sustainability, not what was the other one?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what it is. And what we mean by that is not only science grounded ecology, but the human practices that impact, and as we can tell now, and you referenced climate change, are really becoming profoundly consequential in terms of the planet that we're creating. So that area of practice is, these are interdisciplinary, and the faculty member who is leading, really wonderfully leading the area is Kim Landsbergen. She's joined by Nick Budis, who's the director of the Glen Helen, and working with students and colleagues across the disciplines to work on what a life practice in environmental sustainability looks like and what students could carry with them into the world.
Great. So, Ben, you were going to answer, but just a reminder to everybody that if you have a question, dial star 3 to ask a question, and star 0 if you'd like to make a gift. So, Ben?
There are actually more than one students who are studying what you're talking about, and the one who comes to mind for me is Adam Green. He's a member of the class of 2020. He has worked closely with Professor Landsbergen about the salience of climate change and how it works, but also he's worked with Sean Payne, a professor of political economy, to look into how people think about these things, and he's really, taking an interesting interdisciplinary approach.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, there are certainly a lot of students who are interested in environmental sciences, and if you see the latest issue of the Antiochian, you'll see some examples of some of those current students as well as recent graduates who are working in the field.
Yeah, and I would also like to go ahead and mention, because it was a project that I was involved with, I actually worked closely with Professor Landsbergen on, is the ASHE STARS rating system. So beginning last year, we started going through, it's a national benchmarking tool for sustainability. It's a sustainability tracking and rating system. And through that, we have went through a pretty intense process of looking at how we live sustainability and value environmental sustainability on campus. From looking at academic courses, and we found over 140 courses that were tied to environmental sustainability. From going through and looking at how we're able to involve experiential learning in courses tied to environmental sustainability. So chemistry students who will go to the Glen and measure the phosphate content of water. And then also now, Professor Landsbergen is also working with students to take a next step in that process, which is conducting a greenhouse gas inventory on campus. And that's also as part of our strategic planning process and the work of her working group. So we really have a lot to be proud of in that area, but a lot that we're continuing to work on.
Great. We can go to another caller. We have a question here from Aaron. Aaron, I don't see your class you're on here.
82.
Are you there? Great. 82.
82.
Thanks for joining us.
So I'm listening, and I'm looking at the Alumni magazine, the Antiochian that arrived, and, I don't like getting a lot of junk mail and, all this stuff that winds up in the recycling bin, but this one is really good, and it embodies what you're talking about. But I'm troubled by something, which is, I went to visit family recently, and they said, "How's Antioch?" And, I didn't know what to tell them. I'm hearing the words from you guys, but I don't, right? There's a lot of people saying, "How's this? How's that?" They're not going to listen very long, but it's a sincere question, and I don't know how to translate what I think is not sloganing. It's not trivial, but it doesn't sing. It's not a way that I can answer their question. I thought maybe some other people who are on the call might be able to chime in and make some suggestions as to how do we answer that question that gives the impression of this 60-page, magazine, beautiful, in the in the few seconds that somebody is willing to listen to us.
Great. Thanks for the question.
So I can't resist, Aaron, answering this question, and with credit to Lester Schulman from New York, I think class of 57, we would say you can take those 60 pages and reduce them into 3 words. We're a work in progress. And maybe Gariot and Ben have something there.
I answer that question a bit differently when I speak with parents, prospective students, and guidance counselors. We're a small community, but we're a mighty community. Our students are doing amazing things in the classroom, on campus, in the world, on their co-ops, and our faculty members are second to none brilliant. And I invite folks to come to campus and see it.
Aaron, I can tell you as a student what my day-to-day is like, how Antioch is for me. It's tumultuous in the best possible way. Today, I have debated with 3 different students about what Antioch should look like going forward, what Antioch should do for community justice, what kind of a school we should be. And these are conversations that I have all the time with students. More than once a day, I transferred to Antioch from a different school, and things aren't this way at different schools. People don't care this much. The reason it's probably difficult to talk about how Antioch's doing is because we're constantly in the process of reinvention, and we always have been for 150 years, introducing co-op, thinking about new and better ways to learn, things like that. It's difficult to pin Antioch down because our students are irrepressible in a lot of ways. They're constantly thinking about how to better this place and debating and having it out with each other. And so it's tumultuous. It's strange. And it's probably the most intellectually fulfilled I've ever been in my life. We're doing fine.
Well, there's a follow-up question that came in online from Carl Thatcher that I think relates to part of what Aaron is getting at as well, which is, can you summarize Antioch's progress toward creating sustainable funding goals in line with its educational and organizational ambitions?
Well, I don't want to be first off on all of these questions, but let me say that yes, we part of our plan comes with a business model, a business plan, and our critical need has been to move from the remarkable level of philanthropic support, mostly from our alums, to a sustainable financial framework that actually has a number of revenue streams, but not principally in terms of the only thing we'll depend on, but that we needed to increase revenue from our core program. And our core program is around undergraduate education. And when we got accreditation in 2016, we had virtually $0 coming from tuition. In fact, we had $0 coming from actual tuition. Today, we have increased that number with a concerted plan that Gariot's going to tell you about, and he'll also tell you what our goal in 2025 will be in terms of both, I hope he'll tell you, enrollment and also what that represents as a percentage of overall revenue. Can't do that, I can.
I'll jump in right quick. I think over the course of the last 3 years, Antioch had to begin to build a more sustainable financial model. We were a college that was running primarily off of the generosity of alumni and friend donations. Net tuition revenue or student-derived revenues were at near zero, with tuition discount rates at almost 100%. We have had to quickly, in the last couple of years, move to a more sophisticated financial aid strategy. We're working with families to have a more balanced share of the cost of education. We have a financial aid director who started in January of last year, and he works closely with families from the point of primary inquiry to talk about the cost of education, options for funding that education, and we're working on trying to move our tuition discount number down from about, I believe, 80%. We're tracking at about 65% tuition discount for the students who've been packaged so far for fall. And this also means that we have to pay close attention to our recruitment strategies, our retention strategies, and our plan, as it now stands, is to increase enrollment from the current number of, I believe we're at a little north of 100 students to 350 students by 2025. And that means increasing the number of new students every fall, but also improving on our retention rate.
And moving from, if we start in 2016, from 0% revenue coming from tuition to about 36% of our total revenue coming from tuition and room and board by 2025, and that's about $7 million out of a budget that will be about $18 million.
Great. So once again, if you have a question, you may dial *3, and you'll be connected with a staff member. Dial *3, and we can take your question. And if you're interested in making a gift to the $1 Million March Match, that's *0. So there is another question here from Robert Goldsmith. I don't see your class number either, Robert, but
it's 76.
You have a question here. 76?
Yes.
Great, welcome.
Question. Thank you. Shall I start?
Go ahead.
Question relates to the plan. It's an excellent follow-up question. That is regarding, I wonder if probably, Tom, you're the most apropos to answer this question. I wonder if you could elaborate on the capital program associated with the plan for 2025.
Hi, Robert. Yes, I can. We have associated with the plan, there is a campaign, a comprehensive campaign that is going to be launched in a silent phase this June. It'll come to the board, and that campaign will include capital goals. It's not a capital campaign per se, and I can't tell you what the precise goal for the capital section is going to be, but I can tell you that it includes funds for both catching up the long deferred routine maintenance of many of our buildings, trying to complete some of the second phase capital improvements that were called for in the I believe it's the 2013-14 campus master plan, and but the centerpiece will be around the rejuvenation of Antioch Hall, our main building.
Great, thank you so much for that. There was a related question that also came in online, and that was, we see in the news frequently, unfortunately, dire news about liberal arts colleges. And so the question is, specifically this question says, colleges are collapsing, so how does Antioch figure out how to get enough funds to survive, because so much depends on tuition payments? We've touched a bit on that, but maybe we could talk just a bit more about the environment we're in, the landscape.
So many people will have read the news about Hampshire College deciding not to actually recruit a fall 2019 class, and that Green Mountain College from New Hampshire decided to close its doors. There seems to be almost weekly a news story that's similar. What I think is important to know about Antioch is to go back to those three landmarks that we talked about, and how together, not individually, we can't say we're the only college in the country that emphasizes student agency, or this idea of self-design major. We're not the only college that has some kind of experiential component, and we're not the only college that actually talks about social responsibility and social justice. Fortunately, there are many colleges that talk about all of these things, but they don't offer them with the intentionality and in the high mix that Antioch is doing it. And it's those things and the way we actually deliver on them that set Antioch apart. Just about a year and a half ago, there was an article in the Hechinger Report, which deals with higher education, and I encourage you all to go back and look at your email, if you're Antiochians, to look at this article. And Michael McPherson, who was the president of Macalester College, was asked to comment on what Antioch was doing, and what he said was, all colleges are looking to say how they're unique. And it's easy to write a press release about those things, but it's really hard to walk the talk. Antioch College, Mike McPherson said, walks the talk. And that's how it's actually going to build its pathway to a sustainable future.
Thanks so much for that. Let's see, we have a question here from Pete Creelman, class of 67, calling from Phoenix. Hi there, Pete. How are you doing?
Oh, very good, James. I've been enjoying and finding it really informative listening to this great Tele-Townhall. My question, by the way, I like the charts that were made. They're very graphic, very illustrative of, putting rather a lot of different concepts into a very understandable, presentable form. So whoever did these charts deserves a lot of credit. My question has to do with the second chart showing the three lines, the first one showing enrollment, then tuition and income, and percentage and tuition, room and board income, total percentage. Has to do with the enrollment. There was a rather precipitous drop in student enrollment starting in 2017. It reached a high of 266 in 2015, dropped somewhat in 2016, then it dropped below 200 in 2017 and dropped close to 100, just over 100 in 2018. And I'm wondering what comments any of the panel would have about this big drop in enrollment and what lessons were learned from that experience to hopefully prevent a future precipitous drop in enrollment.
Great. Thanks for the question, Pete.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to jump in again. I'm a big talker. What can I say? So let me just frame that. If you look right above the number that Pete is mentioning in terms of total enrollment at 266, and then, I'm sorry, not above, but just below, look at what the percentage of income was from tuition at that point. What we're looking at is a 98%, what's called in the business tuition discount, and a really small amount of revenue. So this is the year that we got accreditation, I believe. Is this 2017, 2015? And we needed at that point to make sure that we were transitioning to something that could be sustainable in the future. And that's the year that we started to actually, that very next year, ask students to contribute something. And we hadn't built an actual plan or a strategy, and we weren't researching necessarily and doing the kind of marketing work that Gariot has brought. The other thing that's involved here, and I'm saying this so Gariot doesn't have to say it, is that our admission strategy at that point was really pretty undeveloped. If you notice, so Gariot came on board in the fall of 2017, and you see not an uptick in the total number because now we're shifting into students who are actually going to be paying something, and also really orienting or being attracted to this Own Your Education model. So we moved from about 25 students in the class of fall 2017 to 48 last fall, and I'm going to let Gariot answer it from here.
So Tom mentioned some of this. I don't know if you recall, in the first 4 years of Antioch's reopening, all of the students who matriculated received the full tuition Horace Mann Fellowship. And some of our largest classes prior to the 2017 year that you mentioned were students who were graduating and earning their degrees with the Horace Mann Fellowship. We did see a decrease in retention rates after the removal of the Horace Mann Fellowship, and our conversations with families have been markedly different when having a conversation about the share of the cost of education that they would have. Since fall of 2017, since my return, we've been working on a more sophisticated strategy with respect to recruitment and marketing. We're a smaller team now on campus than was previously, and we are working with alums to get out into our target markets. So we expect increases in the size of the new students each year up until we reach our enrollment target.
Great. So we're going to ask one more question here. We've got David Scott on the line, class of 72. David, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. My question is basically and I know we've talked about this, is the partnerships that Antioch can build with the community, with WISO. In fact, a new relationship with WISO is one thing we might want to discuss. But I think our partnership with other colleges and other outreach in the community is critical to the success of Antioch College, and I'd like you to comment on that.
Hi, David. So I'm going to do so. I'm going to do so quickly because we do want to pivot to the other news at hand. So, but I'm glad. I really appreciate this question. So WISO would be that's a whole nother story. We're really, as you know, pleased to be able to tell that story of Own Your Education and a process of 60 years ago that Antioch students in 1958 founded what has now become a nationally distinguished community radio station, and it will be forever community-owned. That's a great story, and we will have an ongoing partnership with WISO. I want to mention, though, two other partnerships that I think speak volumes to the kind of work that we're doing in this idea of collaboration that goes beyond the sort of traditional vision that many colleges and universities have. We've started a partnership with the Yellow Springs Community Foundation with their support around our areas of practice, their areas of interest. It turns out that the same map that we're observing around critical problems in the world is the same map that they're observing here in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And so our collaboration, our partnership is how we use that same map and engage community-based organizations and engage our students through the wonderful Miller Brothers endowment. It's called the Miller Fellows Program, and a new program that the Yellow Springs Community Foundation established called Encore Fellows, which brings people who are more towards the end of their careers with great experience into play as both advisors, mentors for these students, partners for our faculty, and resources for these community-based organizations. I don't know, I'm not saying we're the only college, we're not, that works with community-based organizations, but the idea that we're actually coordinating on that map is significant. And that map extends all the way to the border in Texas, the Mexico border with Texas, and the National Butterfly Center. And that's an emerging partnership that some of our faculty, our CULP faculty, and other faculty have been working to develop. So those are just two examples: one national, international, and the other very local.
Great. So we're going to, as Tom mentioned, we're going to pivot the conversation, and we're going to get to the second topic that we said we would address this evening. Just a reminder that if you are interested in supporting a $1 Million March Match and having your gift doubled, we can take your call tonight. Press *0, and you'll be connected to somebody who can help you with that. Or if you do have a question, we may not end up with a lot of time, but we are interested in hearing some questions if possible. *3 is the number to dial.
So I'm going to pick this up, and I want to actually read from notes here. First of all, I want you all to know that I'm looking at today's Yellow Springs News, and front page. We like it when Antioch, or mostly we like it when Antioch has its own section, and there's an Antioch College section or column, and it says students seek SOPP reform. I don't know if that's online yet, but there will be a follow-up article, I can promise you, next week. And I wanted to tell you what that's about, or as much as I can tell you right now. So last Friday, during a meeting of the Board of Trustees, a group of students presented concerns about the implementation of the college's sexual offense prevention policy, its historic SOPP, and our racial discrimination prevention policy, RDPP, and how these were interfering with their sense of safety on campus. Over the weekend, they developed their concerns in a set of demands that were presented to the board and myself on Monday night. Their demands involved the creation of an accountability committee to review the handling of past SOPP complaints, the hiring of new SOPP and RDPP advocates who can hold student safety as their highest priority, and renewed commitment to the Community Standards Board as a way of addressing and handling SOPP and RDPP complaints. The college's faculty has been supporting the students in their articulation, that is, the students' articulation of the demands for greater accountability and in the implementation of these policies. The board and I and members of the President's administrative team are listening and actively responding to student concerns and frustrations about the application of the college's SOPP, that is the Sexual Offense Prevention Policy, and our RDPP, our Racial Discrimination Prevention Policy. We work very quickly to respond to the students, and by Tuesday afternoon had given them a set of actions that we promised to take. This was followed by a community meeting on Tuesday night, which students gave feedback, on our responses to their demands, and we are now further revising our proposed actions based on that feedback and questions. We are still in process. Antioch College has always had a tradition of student activism, and this action the students have taken is in keeping with that tradition. It is in keeping with owning your education, learning experientially, and acting for justice. The board and the administration agree that the safety and well-being of our students must be our top priority in order for the teaching and learning we desire as a college community to be possible. We are committed to working with the students, faculty, staff, and other members of our community in order to improve these policies to ensure that every member of our community is educated and well-informed about them, and to ensure that these policies are implemented with consistency, care, and equity.
Great, thank you, Tom. If anybody has a question, dial *3 and we can take your question. And Ben, you would like to add to this?
Yeah. Not long ago, I was watching videos of the news coverage SOPP received in the early 90s when it was passed, and there's a bit on Good Morning America Sunday in which the host seemed utterly perplexed that anybody would ever ask for consent when kissing another person. He said something to the effect of, if Antioch College has its way, kissing will involve so many questions and answers, it'll be less like ecstasy and more like Jeopardy. And I thought, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard from my comfortable position here in 2019. I thought, we want to know if, the people we're kissing want to kiss us. SOPP feels elementary to me. And the New York Times and a lot of other outlets just about a year ago now published something to that effect, saying that we saw Me Too coming, that we were the vanguard of a cultural movement that's gained traction. And what's going on now is no different. Like Tom said, Antioch has a history of student activism, and it's who we are. It is impossible to have an Antioch without students advocating vociferously at times to shape it as they feel it should be, to make it a better place. And that we have a group of students who are so concerned about this place and want to better it for classes to come and want to take ownership of SOPP, this really wonderful Antioch legacy of, which we're all the heirs. It's good. It's a good thing what's going on right now. And I think most students see it that way.
Great. We do have one question that's come in on this topic. It's from, well, I can't see who that's from, but I'm going to put you on the air. Looks like you're calling from Portland. Who do we have on the line?
Hi, this is Soleil Sykes. I'm from the class of 2018.
Oh, hey, Soleil.
Hi.
Hi, Soleil.
So my question, hi, Tom. My question is about your announcement. I think it's great that the administration is taking those steps. I'm just wondering, during my time at Antioch, we had similar efforts to address issues and concerns with the RDPP and the SOPP. And so I'm wondering how this most recent effort to address those issues, how that's going to be different from those efforts. Thanks.
Thanks, Soleil.
Yeah, thanks for the easy question. So I think it builds on the understanding and the learning from the requests, the demands, the work, the experiences that, and I'll just take the 3 years that I've been here. And I started in the very first day with a memo on my desk about the experience of students of color and the harassment and bias that they were facing in their dormitories, both student on student and ultimately also some concerns about classroom behavior, and not just in the case of students. So I think what's different, or what will be different, and the learning I'm talking about, is how quickly we responded, how I'd like to think non-defensively we responded, asking the members of the group of people I work with and the board to really listen and put this in the context of not just a week 10 experience, but the entire 3 years, and also to look to the larger context that we're seeing, especially since 2016, but it's not just since the election of Donald Trump, that we see racism and sexual oppression and harassment on the rise. So the other thing I would say, Soleil, that's different is that we're engaging the board at this in this work. The board, not as well, we didn't get it right as an administration or a college, but because we know that this has to be a whole-hearted and a whole institution effort. And I think there's a real sense of being consequential here.
Great. We don't have any other questions on this particular topic, but I did want to make one last pitch. I'll do this for our $1 Million March match, because you're supporting great students like Ben. You're supporting great students like Soleil, who just called in, who's now graduated, but your support in these past years has helped a lot of great people come through here and graduate and going out in the world, and now they're taking the education that they own and they're applying it in the real world, just as they were learning to do as students here. So we do have a follow-up question about enrollment, which I guess we could go to, which was about what lessons we learned from the enrollment decline and as it's going back up. Do we want to address that in the couple minutes that we have remaining here?
Yeah, I'll try to go through that rather quickly. Some colleagues and I are working with a board committee on the student experience to launch a process to write an institution-wide strategic enrollment management plan that looks at enrollment writ large, examining the student experience, understanding what we do well, creating systems to replicate those. We're looking at not just the marketing story of Antioch College when we go out to recruit, but specifically talking to families and students who are right matches for us, who really want to be here, but also creating the systems so that those students can be heard and supported while they are here. Incidentally, this conversation about enrollment is intrinsically, I think, tied to the conversations we've had on campus of late. A lot of the activism on campus is coming from the group of students who are brand new to the college, but who are demanding that we be our better selves. So I think all of this is important to creating an Antioch college that will sustain into the future.
Thank you for that. And if you do want to make that gift, you can dial *0. And it looks like we do have one more question coming in. We just have a couple minutes left, but Tom, did you have any other comments that you wanted to make at this point?
I think we should fit the question if we can.
Okay, yeah, it's not popping up here on my
okay.
screen yet, so I can't accept it at the moment. But
so then yes, I'm never on an empty tank in terms of words. I'm excited about the direction of the college, the work that's being done, and despite the difficulties, I saw earlier that someone had mentioned Hampshire College and sort of the question of fee. We didn't get to it. The difference between Antioch and Hampshire, besides the fact that they actually have a $50 million endowment and 1,100 or 1,200 students right now, is that we're looking at a world where an Antioch College, a place where you can own your education, learn experientially, and act and learn how to act for justice, makes a huge impact. I know a place like Hampshire has had remarkable students, remarkable graduates, and they can produce people who will make a difference in the world. I don't think you will see Hampshire actually ultimately go out of existence. But we're going in a different direction. We know how hard this is. We know how hard it's been. And we're, in a way, passing other places that are concerned about not getting smaller and closing on our way to actually building this new kind of college. That's what's exciting us. I think that's what's energizing a lot of the work, as difficult as it is.
Great. Well, we do have the line open for a few more minutes for anybody who would like to contribute to the $1 Million March Match. Just dial *0, and you will be connected to somebody who can take your gift. And we'd like to thank you for joining us on the call again tonight. We thank you for participating in this and for participating in all the ways that you do with Antioch. We hope to see you at Reunion, July 11th through 14th. Come out to Volunteer Work Project and join this fun crowd that's here. And get on Switchboard. You can go to antioch.switchboardhq.com, where you can help students directly who have needs, or put your own offer out to what advice you can give or other ways that you can help our current students and other alumni. Thanks so much, and good night from Antioch College.